He always pre-laughs. Welcome. Uncle Sugar's Magic Circus. Believe it or not, this is episode 25.
Holy shit.
I know. 24, we had our good friend Dennis Cashin on, Master Sergeant Extraordinaire, and it ran long. So we were like, wow, this guy can talk.
A little long-winded, yes.
So we said, let's do another one with him. So here we are, episode 25. So if you haven't seen episode 24, I would highly recommend you start there, because we're going to continue on Master Sergeant Cashin's life and story as we go along here.
Yeah.
But one quick note before we do that. If you haven't done it yet, and I recommend that you do this, you need to go and check out Axe Head Coffee.
Absolutely.
Right? Not a paid advertisement, just a friend of mine, Jesse Jordan.
Yeah.
Been on the show a couple times, runs this really great company, and he makes every single bit of coffee in his company himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely artisan. Delicious coffee if you're a coffee drinker. If you go there and you buy one of these mugs, Jesse Jordan will send you a free sample of coffee. So check it out. Axe Head Coffee. It's AXHEAD, not AXE. Get it right. All right, so I understand that we have some kind of a letter going on here.
So we always have letters. Oh, I forgot to mention. The mailman had a heart attack in my front yard the other day. He was carrying his big bundle of letters, like 140 degrees. That's Camp Lejeune in the summertime. The son of a bitch keels over. I hosed him down, sent him on his way. He's good. He's going to live, they said. Anyway, we got a letter today from a guy named Jeffrey Whitlow, prior enlisted Marine. My nickname is Iron Man. I guess that means he's a tough guy. Anyway, your show last week, I heard you're going to have a discussion about this guy, Dennis, who had a lot of jobs in the Marine Corps. I'm interested in that, but I've also heard through the grapevine, you two jackasses wouldn't shut up and he couldn't get to the point. Sal's rambling on about the random pooper on the LPD in his last float, and Keith is apparently drunk.
Hey, the Phantom Pooper is real. Everybody has run into that
Yeah,
guy.
And he exists everywhere.
He exists
does.
Yeah. So would you guys please bring Dennis back on, so finish the show? I said, well, Jeffrey Iron Man, we're going to do that today. And as far as Sal does have some anal issues. It's not his fault. He did some time in a Venezuelan prison. And it's scarred. But he's getting professional help for that. So, so without further ado,
Yeah.
Dennis is back.
So speaking of like Venezuelan prisons, like in the last episode, he was like causing international incidents in South America. But then he goes to 9/11, right? So 9/11 happens, and then kind of pick the story back up from there.
Well, I mean, I EAS'd.
Yeah.
So I completed my initial contract on active duty.
Mm-hmm.
Moved back home to New York initially. That was in 2000. I went up to Boston for a year, and within a month of getting up there, someone had already told me, like, hey, Marine Corps Reserve at any given time, you can get in there and do any number of deploy. I mean, a lot of the options are still available. Reserves was a different animal back before 9/11 than it was now. But so I went up to Boston. I was going to school and joined 25th Marine Regiment, and I was a supply guy there. And it was actually just a quick year. I was up there, went to Canada, did an AT, did some stuff. Met some guys I actually went to recruit training with, right? Small Marine Corps. And then after a year, it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't working out. So I moved back down to New York in August of 2001, and I had dropped back to the IRR. Another beautiful thing about the reserves is so once you, you can obviously join the reserves and you're obligated for a contract. But if you are an active duty Marine, I'm only speaking for enlisted, and I don't know how the officers kind of work. I know it's similar, but as soon as you join a unit, you're a non-obligor, as it's called, it means you're not on a contract.
Yeah.
At any given time, unless you accept some kind of money, a bonus, or go to a school in which there's a payback here. Basically, at any given time, you could, like, this isn't for me. Hey, I'm moving to Arkansas, whatever. You can do an inter-unit transfer, which you go to another reserve unit, or you can just quit.
Yeah.
So I actually just quit. So I loved going to the field, and it was, again, infantry units are kind of fun. Those guys stay there forever just because they, So I just quit because I was moving, and I didn't want to. Someone's like, hey, we'll transfer you to some other unit. I'm like, look, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I know I'm just going back to New York quickly, and we'll see what happens. So within 2 weeks of getting back, I was doing absolutely nothing. I think it was around 8 in the morning, and I was still in bed. Everyone in the house had already gone to go do what they're doing, and I'm literally listening to a radio station that usually plays music. Like my alarm would go off, and I just kind of let it, play music.
Yeah.
They weren't playing music, and I remember hearing like, yeah, it looks like the South Tower. I mean, I'm just hearing, I'm like, what the, I'm just questioning what radio station I accidentally put it on instead of I think it was 95 whatever. I forget the New York radio station, but I knew something was up, and I got out of my bed and I turned on the Today Show, and from that point on, I mean, I was out in Nassau County, not in Manhattan or anything.
Yeah.
So right outside of the Queens in Nassau County, Long Island, and I observed the whole. And I mean, I watched from the Today Show. So it was when I started observing, it was just the first tower had been hit, and then I literally watched as Katie Couric and all these other people were talking about because I remember I remember when there was some planes that hit the Empire State Building when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Accident, and I saw the second tower, but I didn't. No one knew, especially from the perspective that NBC had, because they were looking at it when you see and then they weren't able to see the plane actually come in. But it was actually on film. They had to go back and say oh yeah, but that slowly but surely came in, and then you saw the tower explode. So just like I think every former and Marine Corps, we like to tout our we're more patriotic than everyone else or whatever we say, but I was joined by every prior service member in New York City, to include World War II veterans and Korean War veterans, Vietnam veterans. And I was down at
Coming up with their walkers where do I sign up?
Yeah.
So in Garden City, New
We'll
York,
take care of these bastards.
there's a large Marine presence. It's a big building. It's headquarters for 1st Marine District. It's RS New York,
Yeah.
2nd Battalion, 20th Marines, and then it's an administrative building for anyone who's assigned to the National Council on Foreign Relations, usually colonels and stuff. So I was down there the next morning after getting a haircut. Went to my barber. And I was like, So and from that point on, I was on with that reserve unit for about 5 years, active duty for mobilized and active for 3.5 of those basically for Iraq, and great bunch of guys, totally different animal. Most of them, I mean, especially for the one in New York, and because so many people wanted to get back in.
Well, that happens every time there's a crisis.
Yeah.
I was on recruiting duty, and when they blew the barracks up in Beirut,
Yeah.
and guys were coming out of the woodwork. Can I get back in?
Yeah.
They're at the sergeant, because I was on recruiting duty. I'm the XO. The sergeant major's across right there, me, and they're banging on his door. Every recruiter's calling up, and sir, he's got these guys 182. But he's got 12 Purple Hearts. He wants back in. He looks like a badass. No, just stop the presses.
Yeah.
But that happens all the time, and it's a Marine-ism.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even obviously I was talking to this gunny that was the prior service recruiter.
Yeah.
And he was like, obviously I got to turn him away nicely, but they didn't have an expectation. I mean, the Korean vets weren't like, all right, so I was an aircraft mechanic. I'm sure things have changed. They weren't trying to literally, but they wanted to do something. I mean, they realized they weren't going to get put on a ship and
But can I help?
climb down the. They were just looking to look, I can do this. Whatever their civilian occupation was, hey, I can get in there. And
I'll hand out jocks. I don't care. Just give me. I want back in the game, coach. Yeah.
So we were mobilized. I was down at Lejeune for a year. After that, then went to Iraq.
What'd you do in Iraq?
Well, after
It's funny you should ask.
Funny you should ask. I was actually, if you remember from the last episode,
Batman and Robin were stuck inside.
those Duke boys were not going to get out of that. So I was a supply and support administration operations specialist. Which so it's too complex to go in with you gentlemen. But so I had to continue that job when I joined the reserves. But initially, when I got there, I was like, hey, I have a top secret clearance. I can do it now. I have a friend. He was an MSG. He does some acting now. J.W. Cortez, look him up. Right?
Yeah.
He's a prior Marine. He was also a transit police officer in New York City, and then he's been on that TV show Gotham. He was also on the TV show what do you call it? The Stars Earned Stripes. Actually, with Chris Kyle, if you remember.
Yeah.
Chris Kyle was on that. And they were all good friends. So it's like these operator guys or police SWAT dudes that team up with a celebrity and they have to execute missions. You ever seen that?
No, that's great though.
You should say. Oh, I don't know if it's available or anything, but anyway. So J. Edward Cortez, he was the platoon sergeant for comm, and I was like, hey, I just don't want to do supply anymore. I mean, this is the reason why I got out, and if we're gonna like go do stuff, I don't want to be stuck in that job. So he's like, all right. So I was in Compton. I was in a 0612 wireman. Right, but I think it had its old, all the comm MOS used to be like 25.
Yeah, they were all
whatever.
25s.
25, so I think I was actually, during the time period they were transitioning, so I did that for a little bit, but then when they were sending us down to Lejeune, the suppo happened to go to college with my brother.
There's
Small world.
112 people in the Marine
I
Corps.
know, right?
Yeah.
We say that all the
Cat
time.
Mullet, he went to college with my brother, and then became a Marine officer, and he's like, hey, your brother, we went to Nassau Community College together, and he was an active duty guy, and he's like, look, man, everyone is fighting for their empire, right?
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
you're 35th. I mean, like, that's your primary. Like, I need you to get. So I came down to Lejeune here in 2002 for the whole year. Did Fleet Week in New York, though. That was awesome. Just basically sent us back home.
We could do a whole show on that.
We can do a show.
Yeah, I won't get into that. That was a lot of fun, but I ended up as a supply guy the whole entire time. They demobbed us in December of 2002 just for 1 month. They actually, I think it was a trick. Because we were on active duty.
Has to do with money.
I was going to say, if they had us mobilized down line, first of all, we're like the most expensive battalion in the Marine Corps because every single reservist, from private to obviously colonel, rates BAH regardless of, that was a law they put in after Vietnam because all these guys were coming back and they were, the homeless veteran crisis.
You know what I got to do, right? You know what I got to do. BAH.
Yeah.
Yeah, basic allowance for housing. So it's a geographic thing. you
It
know?
is. It's based on your zip code.
Based on your zip code. That's right.
So more money for New York. So they're the most expensive because New York's very
They're
expensive.
putting Manhattan zip, and they're smart about it too. Some of these guys are, living maybe in the,
My
South
apartment
Bronx,
costs-
and they're like, well, in Trump
My
Tower
apartment costs $1 million a month.
All they have to do is got one bill sent to Trump Tower with their name on it. It's like Dennis Christian, whatever.
Staten Island
Mr. Trump, can you
IS.
do me a favor? You're gonna get a light bill. I just need you to just.
It's 82 cents. Just handle it.
So that was great. I got a Mustang out of that deal, and from Sanders Ford down here. But anyway, so we got demobbed for Christmas. They kind of like, hey, we're gonna send you home for Christmas. Make sure, like, we would have been able to go home anyway. It's like
We're cutting the money off first.
So they demobbed us, and so during that time period, actually, there was a lot of guys who, I could have been, Lejeune, when all the active duty Marines were out doing Afghanistan, just, doing, like the 4th MEB AT, remember that?
Yeah.
4th MEB anti-terrorism, like everyone had all these jobs. We were there to, like, maintain the Jacksonville economy or something. You know what I mean? With our BAs, we're like, we're just in the field, and then they're just like, hey, go to Walmart, remember to go to Walmart.
Close order drill with your checkbook.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Lance Corporal's making as much as active duty staff sergeant. So, okay. When they demobbed us, though, there was a lot of guys who, again, remember when I said about that non-obligor status?
Yeah.
Right. So once you get mobilization orders, you can't be like, I don't like,
I got a roast in the oven. I'll see you.
Yeah, negative. You're going. And so during that gap, though, the battalion that went from literally was like 100% TO table of organization. So the staffing was at 100%, or over 100% because of the 9/11 shock. After that, all these guys went home for Christmas. Probably got a lot of these guys had businesses and things like that. They wanted to, and some guys were like, "Oh, I remember why I got off active duty."
Oh, yeah.
Police calling on Saturday was not what I wanted to do in my mid-20s. So we lost a lot of guys. Some of them were in the intel shop.
Yeah.
So I remember a company commander, and actually I told this one little micro story to all like my junior Marines, like that, when they started thinking like, oh, intel, like all these other guys are doing this, and we have to, do that, and I'm like, I was like, you're not special, It's like they see that because they're looking, out, looking in, and you have air conditioning, and you have, because for the computers though, it's not for you.
Yeah. However, nice.
But I was like, remember this, my boss, company commander, walked in one day and said, he was just angry, and I'm just sitting there doing my supply guy thing, and he was like, it's not like I need a super smart guy to do this job, I just need somebody with a top secret clearance. And I think I just rolled my chair back, and I was like, hey sir, I have a top secret clearance. He's like, Cashin, I'm not in the mood for your funny guy bullshit right now. I got real fucking problems. So I was like, no, I just got off embassy duty. I was like, I think it's still good. I'm not sure how long they're good for. And he was like, no shit. All right, go upstairs and see, the gunny here, and And yeah, so I mean, literally, I just walked in, and that's what I mean. It was like more, it was loose and fast back then. I know the reserves resembled active duty more now. So I literally went in there, and I'm an 0200, and they're like, all right, we're mobilized, we're going to Iraq, you're in the 2 shop now. And untrained, I was an 0200
Yeah.
in OIF1. And I'm there, and it's funny, even being an 0200 untrained dude, you kind of knew that we hadn't been to like war in a while.
It's been a hot minute.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially
It was
since,
readily
So
apparent.
what did I do? And that's why it takes a long time. So what did you do in Iraq? Here's what I did in Iraq. When guys, infantry marines would bring a box of unexploded ordnance to my door, and I'm like, hey, so enemy stuff, right? And I'm like, get the grenades out of my face, bringing hooded POWs, like, hey, all right, let's interrogate them. And I'm like, I don't speak Arabic, and I'm not going to jail for, so you know what I mean? Like, I was like, that's not how it works. Should we do it? Like, no, don't do it. No, you're not. Give them some water, sit them somewhere where don't take them into the 2 shop, too.
Yeah.
Like, places where we're not going to discuss classified, put them
Want to look at the map? While
yeah,
you're here?
exactly, yeah, like,
Here's our dispositions in case you're interested.
so, unfortunately, we weren't that squared away. I mean, literally, we had a diesel-powered sipper that worked, like, once a day, or, totally different from the connectivity that we had, like, then and vice now. But, I mean, so that's when I did, and it was great. We ended up a part of Task Force Tarawa, and we just went out. We kind of got stuck in Nasiriyah, in the Dakkar province, and then became responsible for the Dakkar province, where everyone else continued north, Marine Corps and the Army and those two. So it was great.
So let me ask you a question, because I was also with Task Force Tower. I was with the headquarters element. I worked for General Natonsky as the target intel guy. And I just was, you didn't live in the garbage dump with us by any chance, did you?
No,
we lived in the garbage. We literally, just quick story. It's very quick.
Yeah.
It's easy. Like they were like, hey, look, a big flat space. That's where we're gonna set up all our tents and shit, and we're gonna live there. And it was an Iraqi garbage dump. That's where they threw their garbage. And so like when you were digging a hole, you were like, there's like a lot of garbage. Like there's a layer of it actually. And also there's a lot of flies. Like, a lot of flies. A lot of flies.
strategery right there, right? So
Yeah.
no one goes to the dump. It's the last place they'll expect.
They'll never think.
Yeah, it's like you know what to set up in the mall, right?
So no, I guess
all the Iraqi places are malls.
that's where the headquarters set up. Anyway, go ahead.
We were so Camp Whitehorse, which is south, right, first,
Mm-hmm.
and then into the 15th. You got the school, got the college,
Yep.
right? Air conditioning and stuff.
Yeah,
like
college versus garbage dump.
that. Right? And then
You're
so
so thinking.
once the 15th MEU pulled out, the college was too big, and obviously they wanted to immediately give it back to the Iraqis to get people in there. And then so right next to or down the street, down the river, really, we had a museum. Right, literally had like ancient Mesopotamia stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then some individual's house. That's where the headquarters set up in the weapons company. So that was actually pretty interesting. Also to the south of that is the ancient city of Ur. So for all you Bible, that's the hometown of Abraham.
Oh,
Right. So there's
they got a street named after him.
yeah. There's a ziggurat there, and so
Yes.
yeah.
Most people don't know what a ziggurat is. Probably the funniest word in the English language. But I digress.
So I mean,
Ziggurat.
it was
I don't know what it is.
You know what a ziggurat is?
Yeah.
it's like a step pyramid basically. So
Before they got to the point where they made the pyramid smooth, they had
yeah,
these
ziggurat.
kind. Because the engineers couldn't figure it out. They were busy building garbage dumps apparently. So, yeah, the ziggurat.
Exactly.
So Steve Martin mentions the ziggurats in an old skit of his having to do with King Tut, a song. See how old I am?
Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, Mr. Ziggurat.
I'm trying to raise the bar for your show here. Just letting you know, like they're gonna have to pull out. It's not just explaining BAH anymore. It's
We're
now
on the ziggurats
It's
now.
now literally.
These are SAT words.
It's
We're up to
ancient
SAT words at
history.
this point, folks. It's crazy.
We're in a ziggurat right now, actually. You know, that's going to be our new watchword. Broadcasting from Sal Ziggurat in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
All right, Iraq.
All right,
So mission accomplished.
So
Right?
did
You're welcome, America. I came back. It was that.
So do you have another MOS, right?
Yeah. So now, actually, I come back and
Then you went to school.
then they're like, hey, and actually that was the best part of that, right? They were like, hey, I had the command behind me, like, oh, he's in the tube, like I'm already solidified in there. So yeah, they sent me down to Mitzi, and became in 2004. Right?
Yeah.
So became.
So I would have hate to have been your instructor because you're like, yeah, I just got here, but I just did like the Iraq thing with the Intel stuff, so that's not how it works.
Actually, it was kind of, they were looking more for lessons learned. So all those guys at Mitzi, it was 2004, so they obviously were not.
They hadn't gotten.
Yeah, they hadn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Yet. So having and then there was also a reserve sniper who had just came back as well. So like both of us were a wealth of knowledge. But again, it wasn't that like. It was probably hard for those guys behind closed doors, but like when they came out, they were pretty easy, and we were sergeants as well. So another reason why they were like, hey, so did you see anything about this? And then some of the stuff was like, I was like, hey, we the battle, each individual like single battle that we had went so quick that the things you're talking about right now are even like, I mean that's. Fold gap. That's stuff we didn't get to do, or we did in like World War II in Korea.
Yeah.
Right, so like you would do that if we were having a tough time, but we just went through like fire through paper,
Hot knife through butter.
and so the concepts were that if we ever had those things are still relevant right now. Obviously, updated with technology to be able to battle strike. You don't know everything, but we kind of knew everything, and that was like the starting point of what happened after that. We had air supremacy.
Well, you're in blitzkrieg mode at that point, so the intel guys in the 3, having been a 3, get OBE very quickly.
Yeah.
And like you're trying to figure something out, and I go, we're past that baseline. Look next, next.
I was gonna say.
Ah!
Oh my God! Like we were restriking tanks 2 and 3 times. Like they were identifying tanks out in the desert, and they were like hitting them, and then the next day they go like, and they hit them.
2 tanks in the open.
2 tanks in the open. Gotta get them again. They don't say getting. They think that so it was very fast.
Actually, you're right. 'Cause we'd be like, because they'd be taken off.
Yeah,
Right, the target was,
absolutely.
right? So they identified, and like it gets reported up, or sometimes it's identified by the aviation asset that can kill it. It gets identified. So like, oh, okay, could take it off because you don't want to clutter. There's so much stuff you're looking at.
Right.
Clutter it, and then someone else sees it, or a ground force gets up there and sees it. Take it in the open. All right.
Tank in the open.
Take it off.
Take it out. All right, so check this out. This guy's been a box kicker. He goes to embassy duty. He's like, he's an intel guy. Now suddenly,
We're shift gears.
first of all, it's almost like if I had a conversation with somebody like this at the bar, you'd be like, oh
Fuck.
yeah, you were all,
that's-
you're in the Marine Corps.
got
Yeah,
something
you
for
did
it.
all these
Stolen
things.
valor.
Like, I got
Yeah.
all these things, right?
Exactly.
But it's true, like it happens, right? So now, how did you end up at the wing?
So after, so I went to AT's annual training with the reserves, and once I got that primary MOS, like that, everything that I've been begging for when I was actually on active duty, that they denied me, and they're like, but whatever, get out, enjoy your life. I don't care if you stay in the Marine Corps or not. Now I'm and actually I was more trying to be a comm guy or something when I was on active duty. I was like, just get me on a spy. I just want to learn a skill. So I become this intel guy, and I'm like, well, let me see if I can get. So now it's like the end of 2000 or mid 2005. The Marine Corps kind of hurting for people.
Yeah.
Right, so Fallujah had already gone off, like, some of the big fighting's going on, and everyone's getting sent back now, right? And so they're hurting for dudes, everyone's EASing. They did a, stop loss initially during, right after 9/11, but that was lifted, I think, fairly quickly.
Yes.
So I just kind of was like, hey, prime service recruiter, how do I do it? They're like, no, you got to go to an actual real recruiter like you did when you were, an initial civilian as a kid. So I started that process.
That's weird. I thought
Yeah.
the prior service guy handled it.
Oh, it's actually kind of funny. I mean, actually, I don't want to waste too much time on these stories, but they treat you like you are that high school kid again when you do that. So once you get turned over,
Here's the benefit change. What would you like?
not contractually like that.
Oh.
They're like, no, you're not. But like, okay, you're going to MEPS in the white bus with all the.
Other
So I'm like, okay. So I actually was working that day at 225, like doing ADSW work, just trying to get, a paycheck. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go down. I can go to Fort Hamilton. I'll see you right there. So I remember I drove down there, met the guy I was supposed to meet. Like, oh, okay, good. He had all these poolies with him, the guys that are about to join. And I'm in Desert Digitals, right? Sergeant chevrons,
Yeah.
ID card, like.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, they're gonna do that, and I sit in this classroom.
Now you got to duck walk and show them your.
I had to do that, but I was really angry because you had to go from like you go from one of the. I didn't hear the last thing he said. To like, yes again.
Yeah. Yes again.
That's why I got out. I wanted to do this again. You know what I mean? Like,
Why do they want to see you? Why do they want to see your buttholes? It's so bad.
Yeah, I've been going to doctors for years.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Why do they want to see your butthole so bad?
This is back to Sal and Venezuela, I'm telling you.
It's true. We always end up here, Sal. Why?
It just makes me laugh.
He does bring up a good point because you go to doctors all before you're a Marine, and then even while you're a Marine. I haven't. No one's done that.
No.
But when you're joining, you're like, yeah,
It's the most important thing on earth.
Exactly.
Does he even have money?
Just like exactly. Right? You could be lying. You could be like Kim Jong Un, like he knows. So yeah, he's trying.
I'm sorry. I'm literally crying.
So I went through. They were angry that I was actually in counties. And here's why.
Who was angry?
The MEP staff, right? The MEP's like a joint unit, so they're and I remember some Coast Guard person was like, "Hey, you can't be wearing that." Like, and the way she said it was wrong. You know, about like Christopher Lloyd. I was like, "You're talking to me all wrong." Like, what's
For
going on?
starters, you were in Coast Guard, so
Yeah.
shut the fuck
Right.
up.
So yeah, it was, and again, I'll just cut right to the point this time. And I'm very forcefully pushing back, like, yeah, I don't care. Go get elected or get a commission or just get the hell out of here. And they're like, oh, we need. And she goes and gets someone. Some army captain comes in. It's like, oh, hey, you can't wear that. And I'm like, I pull out my ID card. I'm like, tell me why I can't wear this on I'm on an arm. I was like, in the Marine Corps, we're the only ones who actually have that like crazy law where you can't wear this.
Yeah,
he's off
walking
base.
around, yeah.
But I was like, tell me why I can't wear this. And he's like, no, what it is. And actually, it made sense. And I had to get this. I found a Marine down in the basement where the Marine office is from MEPS. So I was like, hey, you got any PT? I'm like, one of the worst things ever is wearing someone else's PT.
Yeah, right.
Right? So I'm like, here's why. Once you make it through, and you probably remember this, especially if you're on recruit duty, once you get to a certain point in MEPS, not, like on recruiting stations and things like that, it says no recruiters beyond this point.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and this is, I guess, as old as, as time, poaching. When you're in there and you're sitting there waiting to do your duck walk, you might have only talked to an Air Force recruiter, right? And then all of a sudden you got this Army recruiter, like, happens to like sit there. It's like human. And you're sitting there like pulling up a newspaper, and he's like, "Wow, what made you join the Air Force? Like, did you know about the, whatever, like the free, jumping out of airplanes?
Can I see your butthole?
Yeah, exactly. Because in the Army we don't look at you.
We don't even care about
Right? So they would do that, and someone's like, oh, and it's pretty easy. I guess once you're, it's all like basically DoD paperwork, with I'm sure with the exception of Coast Guard, right? So you just like all you gotta do is like cross out, like I mean, you remember that there's literally just boxes to check. Marine Corps, Navy, aren't Yeah. So and even that also there's the undue influence, right? You're not supposed to like even if I'm not a recruiter, I'm not like having them sign contracts like he's duck walking or whatever. It's not just that. It's just like I go in there as a United States Marine Sergeant. I'm like, yeah, good again. Some guys are just like, I want to be that instead of.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually
that
the
guy
Marine Corps
was squared
recruits.
away, and my fat Army recruiter
Yeah,
right.
told me I was going to be an airborne gynecologist.
Yeah.
Can I be one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean
That's why.
That's essentially why. But I took it as like a slight, whatever.
Not that there's anything wrong with the Army.
No. They have their niche.
Is that what you call it, a niche? Ziggurat niche? Roll over him after this.
Oh boy.
So
You want to try?
I come back in. They actually have me on recruiting duty, essentially, like basically recruiting assistance, awaiting orders. So I ended up waiting around for a couple months, assisting a recruiter, which was an experience. And then I got orders, and I was like HMM 364, and I had been raised the way like most Marines are. The wing is one of the three components of the Marine Corps, logistics, infantry, and just ground essentially, and then air. And you're still like swinging with the wing, all these little things. You think it's just easy.
Yeah.
And I had that in my head, like, I'm gonna go to the wing, and I'm like, oh, which one is my squadron? I remember using the internet to see Mag 30. I'm like, oh, it's Mag 39. I'm looking at the. And this is always kind of funny. I'm looking at the icons of the squadrons. It's like a snake. It's like a ninja punching a baby. You know what I mean? Like all this, like, I want to go to that squadron. Right? And then I look and I see, and all of a sudden there's this cartoon, this purple cartoon, like smiley little, dog-looking thing, like with his tongue out.
Pokemon.
Right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I wonder what. Okay, that's where I'm going. So and I'm like, wow.
And it's funny too, because a lot of those squadrons have really cool patches. A buddy of mine went to an anti-submarine unit. and we used to bust his balls because the patch, it either looked like a cigar that they were hunting or a turd. So you're a turd hunter. Know what you're telling me? Nice patch, turd hunter. And everybody else, like you said, has the shark eating a nun, and
Yeah.
you know, and all sorts of cool, badass shit. And
But I think the law of the iconology, universe,
Iconology.
iconology universe, whatever, symbology,
symbolism.
Symbolism.
is like the more badass the logo
Yeah.
is usually the less badass of the unit. And
kinda
then
true.
like, so I mean, I remember there was this like, in Iraq there was this unit that was like completely, like it was off the grid. Like they would just show up, but and I got to know them because when I would fly with these guys, give them rides, they just had a pink bunny. They looked like the Energizer bunny. It was a pink bunny, and those are the guys that literally would be like, I'm like, what's our ASR today? And they're like, we don't really know. We know we're like going here, and we're picking up these dudes, and then like they're supposed to tell us what to do. And I'm like, that I've never heard that. What do you mean? I'm like, how do you calculate fuel? Hey, how you doing all this other stuff? And they would pick up dudes and then just drop them off and then thank you for your service and they'll be gone. But like again, the guys who are out there doing stuff that no one ever knew about, they don't have the
They're not telling
they don't have the symbol that has like
It's gotta have a skull. It's gotta have a skull.
like He-Man crushing
Things gotta be on fire or something like that.
But when I ended up going out there,
Pirate,
so
right?
I had this interpretation about what I was going to be doing already and the expectations.
Of course, it was wrong.
And it was and again, just like
Always
I said,
wrong.
and I'm looking at this like this cartoonish, whatever Squadron patch. I'm like, oh, who are these guys? And I get there, and it's funny when you talk to Vietnam veterans, and when you talk to, I used to have the sticker on my car, I weathered off, whatever, but like the Purple Foxes.
Yeah, you were
Those-
Purple Foxes. Yeah, I know exactly what it is.
So
Yeah.
and I love just folklore and like there was plenty of stories when we flew. Vietnam's obviously their heyday,
Yeah.
and the squadron motto is "Give a shit." Right. So first of all, you get there and you meet the awesome dudes that are we're getting ready to go to Iraq. As soon as I got there, I had like 4 or 5 months to work up and go, and I'm the intel chief. Right, so I'm OT-31. I went to school.
Talk about getting thrown in a goddamn fire.
But not really, because I have one Marine. Because the Marine Corps is designed to go composite. We're built off the MAGTF, Marine Air Ground Task Force concept.
But think about that. How much intel time you got? I'm
Oh, yeah.
going down range, and I am now the intel chief.
And all my knowledge is nothing about anything
but-
more than 10 feet off the ground. Unless it's like an artillery. But even that's the I don't.
Somebody else does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get there. I get a PFC, who's my Marine, and we get ready. We go to Iraq, and so we go there. We have a pretty good deployment till the end. So we did have an aircraft shot down, and the Marine, one of the 7 Marines that were shot down, one was the intel officer, my boss. So it really made you focus. Again, everything about the wing, right? Where they're never in danger. They're never where
That's all wrong.
yeah. And they work their asses off, right?
Thanks, Al. This is no shitter. So I was an Earth Pig Keith, and I'm working for, I was at Coronado and doing over the horizon boat stuff, but one of the colonels in the staff, who was also the coach of the softball team, was a great dude, and was a jet pilot. So it got to be, you don't get friends with colonels, but I mean, I was a broke dick captain, but we started talking one day. I did not realize that the air wing works 24 hours a day. So the Earth Pigs, no matter how bad it is, eventually you get to do a little sleep, whatever. He had explained to me, he goes, well, Keith, when the jets, the work, turning bolts to fly time is way out of kilter. So we run 3 shifts like a factory. I'm from goddamn New Jersey. I understand factories. My father worked in a factory. I get it. So I'm like, really? They don't like go home at 16:30? He goes, yeah, some of them do, but then another group comes in. And then they go home about midnight, and then another group comes in. I'm like, really? As a captain, I didn't realize that. Because you get stuck in your own bubble.
Yeah.
And I get on the radio, the helicopters come in, I get on, they take me to the wrong place, sometimes. They take me to the right place, sometimes. And I thank them as I'm getting off the plane.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it took to keep those things in the air. Again, you don't know what you don't know. So those guys work their asses off.
Yeah.
The wing nuts. The wing nuts work.
So that's, when I was at Force, one of the things I used to like, the helicopter squads, it was HMLA 167. I got to be really good friends with a guy who was a mechanic, and he kind of was showing me some of this stuff
Yeah.
because what I saw was like, you know, pulling out coolers with steaks and grilling stuff,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
drinking beer and they're hanging out. I'm like, hey, Wing looks great, man. I want to go hang out with those guys.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was night crew coming off and eating fucking steak breakfast
Yeah.
with beer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're done with their day and now they're going to go to sleep. You know, while
And the
everybody
work
else
week
is
begins
up.
on Sunday night.
Oh
Yeah.
For
yeah.
night shift.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they're never not turning wrenches. Saturday and Sunday, Christmas, Hanukkah, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, nobody cares.
These guys are turning. And as an earth pig, I'm just pissed off if they're late or they don't, you know, or God damn you put me in the wrong LZ again, I'm going to kill you. Because you just don't, of course, they don't know what the earth pigs do as most
Or they
days
don't
either.
show up.
Or they don't show up at all, and then you'll
Yeah.
kill the three. But yeah, it's interesting. And again, we always have these preconceived notions in the Marine Corps of what we're going to walk ourselves into.
Yeah.
And for those of you kids out there in TV land watching this, think, oh, the recruiter told me what boot camp's going to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Kind of. Yeah, no, it's wrong. It's pretty
Yeah.
wrong.
It's probably wrong.
Yeah.
So here, interestingly, I know you got combat aircrew wings, which means that you were an air crewman and you were in a combat situation. So that's a weird transition from being an intel guy. So how does that?
Yeah,
whole
how did you
thing
get
happen?
there?
So it wasn't that I transitioned from Intel. I was always the Intel chief of that squadron. So after that deployment, kind of like how I wanted to be something other than supply. You know, whatever unit I'm with, I want to be a part of what the core mission of that unit is. Essentially, and it's nothing too big brained. It's just when you're not that. Whenever there's meetings, whenever there's things, you are kind of left out.
You're
or-
the support guy.
Yeah, you're just like you're
not
no
the
one.
focus of that
You know, they don't have the second thought for you if there's going to be a FAP or something or fleet assistance program.
We
you
talked
know,
about that last
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be you. And again, at this point, I shouldn't be worried about that. I'm a staff sergeant. I'm not going to get like FAP to the gym or something.
You might.
I was like, that wouldn't be that bad. I could use it. But anyway, I wanted to get more involved in that. And obviously, when I went on that first deployment, it was myself and another Marine. There was no room for me to go do extracurriculars or whatever. But the NBC person, like anyone who didn't have like an everyday, all the time job deployed, if they could pass the aviation swim qual and then pass a NATOPS test, don't ask me to do NATO. I don't know, naval aviation, blah blah blah, whatever. That's the
It's how they work. It's like their Bible.
It's like the owner's manual to your vehicle, but to a helicopter.
Yeah.
But you imagine if you had to take a test at the dealership before you right before you could take it home.
Right.
And again, you're talking about a non-primary aviation guy, and
Yeah.
I'm like, so imagine. I'm sure if we ever get a pilot here or a real crew chief, they'll explain it. But so I asked to screen the guy, and it's not like like an ANS kind of screen or something like that. I was like, hey, can I do that? I got an additional Intel Marine to make sure when we deploy, they can have 12 on, 12 off for both of them, and then I could come in and fill in the gaps. Went and did my flight physical, step 1, step 2, do an aviation swim qual, which is it's Navy based essentially, class 1 Navy. So
Which is what?
I know it's changed now, but class 1 Navy is like basically like a 1,200 meter swim. I mean, or it's a bunch of different strokes, right? I think you have to do like 100 meters of survival breaststroke, not the
Yeah.
breaststroke you learned in high school. You finish with freestyle. You start with the hard ones,
Yeah.
and then you finish with like just basically make it there,
Yeah.
And then you do your 10-10 inflate,
Yeah.
right? And these are all just the swim qual
Yeah.
things before you go to actual. You're basically puzzle, solving puzzles underwater, opening up little air doors. But you have to pass this couple of tests before you do it. And that's actually the hardest one for me was the 10-10 inflate. The thing that like you make it to by swimming all these different strokes.
Yeah.
Then they're like, all right, now get in there. Basically, just you tread water for 10 minutes, drown proof for 10 minutes, and you're on your full flight gear, right?
Yeah.
And then inflate and you get out. So you inflate instead of hitting the CO2 cartridges,
Yeah.
like, psh, which would probably happen. That failed, so you're gonna have to self-inflate.
Yeah.
So when you're watching somebody do that, you're like, that looks. I hope I.
You go, yeah.
You know what the hardest part for me is? The transition from treading water
Yeah.
to drown proofing.
Oh.
Drown proofing is and actually I wanted to taught my son how to do it. He hates to do it, but it's
Everybody hates to do it.
Yeah, but drown proofing is it's better than inflating your little blouse and
Yeah.
floating
I'd
around.
rather do that than
Drown proofing is literally
Yeah,
put your
sure.
face in the water and relax,
Yeah. Stick your ass
right?
out.
And you're holding your breath, and then you You breathe out, so you start to sink a little bit, but your helmet floats still, so you're getting pulled up a little bit. And then you just go, like, take one little stroke, you pick your head out of the water and go,
And do it
and
again.
stick your head in the water. And you could basically, I mean,
Technically,
you'll starve to death before you sink to the bottom of the
Right,
ocean. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, I couldn't believe you just human beings don't instinctively know to
Yeah.
just, let me just relax, or just
Yeah.
floating on your back when you get pulled up by a rip current.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone dies in rip currents, fighting to get back in, and whatever, trying to.
Mhm.
If they just relax. Granted, it's hard to relax when you're like,
When you're
I don't want to pick my head up and then,
Look, I'm
see
3 miles
Bermuda.
off.
Yeah.
But anyway, the hard part is when I'm skinny, right? I don't have a lot of body fat. I'm not very buoyant. Now you just strapped a bunch of stuff to me,
Yeah.
right? Which is even worse. So for my buoyancy is like, oh look, a stick floats perfectly. Let's tie the cinder block to that little stick and see what happens. That's my
I'm that guy.
that's how I exist in the water.
Yeah,
right?
zero body
So
fat.
like I'm all muscle. Like the only reason why my mouth is not like is because I'm. So how do you go from? And they're like, all right,
To
here you go.
relax.
Here you go. All right, drown proofing. So I was the guy that I think actually I got pulled out the first time, not because it was like life saving. I got pulled
Yeah.
out because they're like, I think these corpsmen, Navy corpsmen are running it, and they're like, after about 30 seconds, they're like, hey, you gonna put your face in the water anytime soon there, Cashin? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, because I'm so out of breath, and now I'm like putting my face in the water, but like and they're like, all right, get out, try it again. I'm like, damn it. So once I did it again, it literally is a mind over matter type situation where you're like, I had to get in there. You're like, I just want to breathe. I need to breathe air. I love air. And you just fight it. And I'm like, I hope I don't pass out. And this is not a hard thing. This is not like this is not like down the street of Coronado. It's like I'm like making this tiny little. It was just like a mental thing I was having where I couldn't I don't know why I couldn't do it, but I did. I ended up doing it, and then I was whatever qualified for that. To begin, being an AO, and then you basically go.
What's AO?
Well, it's actually AGO, right? So in the MOS manual, the Marine Corps MOS Military Occupational Specialty Manual, Ziggurat.
I didn't see her.
There's a whole bunch of primary MOSs, then there's additional MOSs, and then there's all these different types of things. There's NMOSs, like necessary MOSs. They're like basically like a little linguist who speaks Arabic. The Arabic portion is
Necessary, yeah.
So there's 6199 is an aerial gunner observer, and it's an NMOS, right? So it's an MOS that kind of like anyone can have. I think it's an NMOS or an AMOS. So once I went through and finished all the qualifications and training, something like that, you go down to IPAC and you're like, here's my, and then I got my gold wings first, right? The aircrew wings, pass your NATOPS test, and then tests on the actual airplane, right? So you have to shoot the gun, you have to do a whole bunch of all your emergency procedures and things like that to be able to be a crew member. And that's when I got my gold wings. And then once I did that, you're flying, it's great, so much fun. The things that like really, when you think, oh, the wing has it easy, like, it wasn't a lot of cookouts, a lot of things like that, but the things that were awesome was like, oh, we're going to 29 Palms to do, if it was like a meth level exercise or like ITX, so you're like, okay, so like everyone just shows up to work at the same time they normally do, and we just fly out there, do whatever we got to do, and then we're like, well, and then you basically go home.
Yeah.
Where everyone else is like, haven't seen their wife in 3.5 weeks, and they're like, and they have to drive back, So that was great, and really enjoyed that. I enjoyed flying up and down the Southern California coast, and then went to Iraq. And then when I went to Iraq, again, the combat aircrew wings as well as the air medal itself for the air medal for strike flight.
Mm-hmm.
The air medal is an interesting award because if I wear a numeral 2, right? Like most like career pilots have like 10, or 12. That's a significant amount of combat sorties.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a point system, right? So the aviation ops, there's a department there that literally is tracking everyone's hours. So you have it in my flight logbook, which is like an FAA flight logbook that I have. But they also track it for your air medal, and then for the enlisted, right? Officers are not eligible for the combat aircrew wings. You get a certain amount will give you those, and then it'll change the amount of stars you have. Because when you buy them, they'll usually just come with 3 gold stars.
Yeah.
You can actually buy them with just holes.
Yeah.
And actually, you can be awarded them with just holes, from what I'm told. But then you don't rate permanent retention. So whenever you leave that squadron, you don't get to rate it. You have to have at least like 1 gold star to rate them. So that's why most people, and it's hard to get them with just like Oh yeah, you just rate the wings, but not anything else. It's like I've never seen that actually, but that's what I was told. I mean, double check the Marine Corps uniform item or manual or something like that. But anyway, so when I went to Iraq, I started flying with, and like I was on the schedule regularly, and I was on the schedule a lot actually. And I think in July 2008, I flew. I was one of the obviously you can see how many hours everyone has each month. And I was up there within the top 5 guys, along with the pilots and the crew chiefs and stuff. And I think I did cry uncle for a little bit too. And I was like, hey, I'm still the intel chief or something like that. And I was just really, but I mean, it was great. Being so confident, being able to like kind of land anywhere and like knowing. I knew all the refueling places, every place in Iraq. To be able to, as soon as we get off, we could do it in a heartbeat. I could load equipment, or we don't load yet. Obviously, we're going to sip gas first. Oh wait, come over, pick up packs. And if you're helping out your buddy, he's the crew chief, who's got, a more complex, he's got more responsibility than you, even if he's a corporal, and I'm a staff sergeant, I'm like, hey boss, what do you need?
Yeah.
So,
this secondhand stories, but I've heard of crew chiefs and also like,
AOs, but AGO, aerial gun observers.
AOs like kind of fucking with the flight crew. Like this one very quick story. Like I remember this guy telling me the story. Like he stuffed a pair of gloves and he taped and he like glued them down on the hellhole, which is like a hole in the bottom of the airplane. And then he was like, "Hey sir, I'm just gonna walk back to the back," and he goes, "Whoa!" and he unclicks his
ICS cable.
his cable for his comms, and he throws it down the hellhole and steps to the side. So in the cockpit, I guess, the pilots can kind of look back and see what's going on. And they look back and they look at the hellhole and they see gloves and the ICS cable going down the hellhole. And they're like, oh, Jesus! Anything like that ever happened to you?
Those things are, and again, I have, this stuff was well established before I even got there. I feel like I was always, I had to be read in, or included on there, like, hey, do you want to do and half the time I didn't hear the word, like, hey, let's do one of those things we did. So every time I got involved with one of these things, I was like, what do you guys? So here's what we do. The only times like I would, and again, I never thought of anything of these things myself. So some of the things that we'd like to do, just because the infantry.
Because that's what Marines do, is
because you're bored, right? And you're like, oh god, you got to make this interesting. Like, I'm doing this every day, all the time, So especially at night when we're picking up infantry Marines, we either want to make it fun for the Marines, or it's just great to insert a catalyst and watch a company gunny just go with it, or like a motivated squad leader, something like that. So like we would do what they call the Fallujah 500, right? And it was I think when Marines were leaving Iraq, they would ground convoy to TQ or Al Saad, and they'd hit IEDs, and guys literally who've already turned over with the infantry battalion, turned over all their like crew serve weapons, stuff like that. They'd go home with their pack and their rifle and get killed. I think I forget who was the CG at the time. It was like, all right, never again. They're being airlifted out of, especially when they're on their way, home from this place to this place, right? So, so we would be doing that, and for RIP TOAs and stuff like that. So you're taking the guys who just came in all the way in, drop them in, picking up, and literally that's why they call it the Fallujah 500. Not necessarily, it's not like 500 trips or anything like that. It seems like an endurance race, like it would in NASCAR.
Well, you can only put so many guys in a bird.
Yeah, especially in the summertime, 46, which medium lift, it's hot, right? So you don't have the same kind of, so you're like sometimes throwing off bags, like, no, not that one, this one, and infantry guys tend to have not by their own decision, have a lot of stuff, when they show up. So we would drop them, so it got to a point where like some guy came up. On the back of most of our aircrafts, there's some ACE gear, right? ASE, aircraft survivability equipment, right? It's like their countermeasures and so some detect, some of the items that shoot out like countermeasures, flare, or whatever. So they're very prominent on the back of the plane when the guys coming in, and these guys don't know anything about the way. So I think one of the crew chiefs was like, we're loading guys from 2 different lanes. I've got the left side, he's got the right side, and they're coming in, and I think one of the crew chiefs like, hey, no one can hear anything, right? So he's got to like go like this to lift his helmet out. Like, so company guns is like, all right, I got this squad. Oh, good, we gonna. It's like, all right, hey, just. So there's like, hey, you got an ID card? Right? He's like, what? where's your ID card? Right? He's like, he's like, all right, scan your ID card. So the little eyeballs in the back of the plane, we were making that. So all it takes is one Marine in a position of authority to see, like, oh.
Oh, we're scanning.
So now you see a whole, like, 900 guys who are about to get on a plane, like, hey, when you get up to the 46, remember to scan your ID card. And I'd be sitting there with my eyes in, and this is literally a little black box with a red button on it that I press, and I can talk. That's all it does. And I've used that thing, in grifting, basically, to use, like the guy would come up, scans the ID card on the, and I'd be like, no. just like you're at the front gate, you're at the front gate when the guy's like scanning your ID card, he's like, wait, hold it to the side. I'm like PMO now on the front gate, like that. No. And then so every once in a while I'd be like, just go back to the back. Sit with the back. No. Yeah, maybe next time. Maybe next appointment. I think you're going home. So yeah, because it was funny. They started doing that in theater. I remember, like, when you come in, like some admin dude in Kuwait is like scanning your ID, and that proves that you have,
You're there.
tax-free money. That is real service.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't hard to sell. Scan your ID card. Make sure you manifest it on the plane. You're like, I manifested with the AgDag. This is.
Pictani does that.
This is the final scan.
So yeah, that was one of them. The other ones actually were again. I think I heard about one of them. The push starting the 46 was the one I had heard about that in the when I was in infantry,
on Earth, yeah.
right? And so I witnessed some dudes. I think they were going for a jump too, which I think made the emphasis.
Yeah, because
Right.
everybody wants to jump.
really
I want to
wanted
go.
So,
But the wing will do that to each other.
Oh yeah.
So I told him my buddy Larry I grew up with this screwball. He's got a 56-pound brain and he's certifiably insane. And I mean certifiably insane. Anyway, he's a pilot. I'm down at Hurlburt Field going through a course. And he's over at Pensacola and he's going to come over and see me. So he goes, hey, I'm going to catch a ride on one of the helos because there's a rebuild facility down there. And when they test the planes, they go up and ride around. He goes, oh, I don't remember. He says, just tell him to drop me off. He's in civilian clothes. Hey, cool. So he grabs an ICS, so he's on with the pilots and the crew chief. And they're testing the plane while it's just been fixed for something, while they're running them over so he and I can go eat sushi and get drunk all night. So he's a pilot. So he slides up, tells the crew chief. He starts pulling fuses out of the back where the fuse panel is. Pop! He's listening. Oh, whoa, we got a chip light, and he plugs it back in. He does this for like 20 minutes before they realize that he's the one in the back. Fucking one. I'm like, Larry, why did they throw you out at 10,000 feet, you stupid ass? They know me. It's big. They fuck with each other.
that's true. The chip light detector. That's a non-starter.
Yeah, it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
It's not a funny one.
Yeah, that's.
He doesn't care. He's
the
retarded.
hydraulics. That means there's maybe metal fragments like that in the hydraulic. It can shut you down. You're literally. I think when you have one of those too, the first thing the pilots are doing are like, okay, all right, where are we going? Where can we go? Like where can we go right now? So yeah, those are.
Yeah, so he spent an afternoon doing that.
So speaking of hydraulics, Dennis was telling me there's like a backup pump, I guess, on the 46 for the hydraulics.
It's not a backup pump. It is literally for when the system's cold, right? To get you can only start the again, not crew chief, but you have the APU and then the actual aircraft engines. The APU is the alternate power unit thing.
Yeah.
It's just basically it's an engine to start the engine. It just provides electricity and start it, right? So that's the but the whole hydraulic system obviously needs to be a certain PSI. I'm sure you're going to get a letter from some crew chief who's like, it's inaccurate, whatever. So all I know, again, as
Who was this
doing this
jackass?
12 years ago, I remember it, like, and again, being like, a corporal's assistant. Hey, Cash, can you just, I'm like, okay, roger that. So it's before you let it. I mean, and you sit there and it'll, if you don't have enough, I know sometimes we try to light it off and it wouldn't turn over, right? And you're like, oh, and you'll see a crew chief sprint back to the pump, right?
Yeah.
To try, and then he can maybe save it, pull it out, because if not, that means like all the pressure's gone, and you're just sitting there pumping it, so you can actually have pressure to let it off. Well, once the APU goes off, and then obviously the pilot goes through the startup checklist and the actual plane, and that thing is, and then you usually shut off the APU, right? That's the pilot will shut it off, and that thing is just nothing. It's an appendage. It's useless, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing. Right,
because it doesn't do anything.
It's just a big handle.
Yeah, because the pressure's already there now. So now it's not like hard or anything like that. The thing's just like it's nothing, right? It's like a shake weight.
Right.
So,
Let's not go down that path.
yeah. So what Sal's alluding to is actually the thing that, and again, whatever code word for it, we were taking a bunch of guys from 29 Palms back to Pendleton, and we're flying to like the Chocolate Mountains, I think, right? Right. So it's really fun to do that. We're not turfing, but we're flying low enough to where it's just like, again, one of the things you just enjoy. About
it's cool.
And again, as an AO, I don't have a gun in the window or anything. I'm just like sitting there, just staring at awesome Southern California terrain,
Yeah.
And until I hear like, hey, what do you say we, like, so what does that mean? We're like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. And again, that's how it starts off. I'm a pretty good like, what do they call it, improv kind of guy, I guess, because they're like, all right, Cash, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna scream. It always starts with that, like I'm gonna scream really loud, and then I'm gonna sprint back, and I'm gonna start getting on the hydraulic pump. I'm gonna start pumping it, right? And then Captain whatever is gonna he's going to increase power. Like, we're going to start losing power. So, he's going to probably make some pedal adjustments where it, like, shudders a little bit, And then I'm going to sprint back there. I'm going to start pumping it. And he's like, and then I'm going to hit exhaustion. And you're going to come back there and take over from me. And he's like, and then once you hit exhaustion, I'm going to just point, I'm going to say, like, life or death. Like, the pumps, every time we stop pumping, stop pumping. The aircraft's like, losing power, doing the stuff. And then, right, so then you're going to tag on one of the packs, the packs we refer to just passengers in the aircraft. Grab him and be like, yeah, get in there!
Save the plane!
Yeah, so like he's gonna, every time he pumps, the pilot will like increase, but like, every time he slows down, the pilot's gonna, or even if he's like going awesome, the pilot's just gonna do it anyway. Where he's just, it's not enough! Go faster! Yeah, so I mean that's exactly how it is. Like, we're like, oh, we're almost gonna, and then like so. The funny thing is, once we tagged into the, like 10 or 12 passengers in there, like we just go back to like I go back set on my ammo count 11. I'm just like, look at these guys, I'm tagging you, and they're going through just exhausting the hell out of themselves
For no reason.
Yeah, for no, and we just like basically just haze them the whole time we were back there, and yeah, it's funny how like these things are so well known to these guys, and it doesn't. Man, we just ruined it. Sorry, Air Wing. If there's infantry Marines watching this, forget about it.
You never heard that from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other story I told you, I think, was, and this was honestly my, and this is where being an intel chief kind of came. It was like a Seinfeld Curb Your Enthusiasm circle that came back to kind of like bite me a little bit. And this wasn't something that's like new. This was only could have been done in a combat zone. And I guess basically how it transpired was we were doing I wasn't doing it. Pilots are doing the mission planning, right? They've got a lot of tasking. We're picking up guys here. We're doing a GS mission. We're not doing a CASBAC or any of that stuff. And pilots like, okay, we're going from here. And it's kind of just confusing. And then they look at there's some Cobras that are on this range. So as soon as there's some very similar things about being a Marine anywhere, but before you leave the wire, so to speak, you controlled airspace.
Yeah.
You're going to test your guns. You need to test your offensive, whatever defensive weapon systems before you do that. So obviously it matters a lot to a Cobra. He wants to make sure all of his weapons like systems. For us, it's literally our XM218 variant of a 50 caliber machine gun, and if you have a tail gunner, it's a 240. But you're test firing those like 10, 15 rounds or something like that. 50 cal at a Hulk. And you only have this much of a window to fire, when you go through it, and then you're only, the actual verbiage is you're clear to fire when your targets are a beam. Not like targets in sight, not targets, so you have to wait till, if you're on where I am at 9 o'clock, it's like you have to be basically between, 10 and 8 o'clock. You only have the 9 o'clock kind of range fan to be able to engage it. And again, it's pretty easy to do that with just 10, 15 rounds. Same thing for the 3 o'clock on the crew chief side.
Yeah.
So we do that every single time. So we're looking, we're like, okay, well, we're kind of breaking procedure because of tasking, and there's Cobras on Rainier Range, and when they test weapons, they're testing weapons. They're not like firing like Hellfires and stuff, but they're doing stuff.
They do a lot more shit.
Yeah, and a lot more things can kind of go wrong, so. Anyway, so there's some Cobras on the range. We can't, it's the last minute thing we find out we can't do it. So we want to meet our timelines, because timelines are everything in the way. So we're like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to fly to Fallujah, just boom, go right there. We're going to pick up our ASRs. On our way back, because everything else is all out west, we're going to, and it makes complete sense, it's not even a big thing. Whenever possible, you want to fly over controlled air, controlled ground, controlled air. So if you're flying out somewhere and there's Al Assad, obviously. Also, you have to check it. The tower controls your flight when you're near those areas anyway. So like, it's not like you're gonna be like, well, we could go through there, but I'd rather just fly over the open desert, because it's cool. No, you don't get to make those decisions.
Stay in the highway.
So we're going there and we're flying. We're gonna transit TQ's airspace at that time. Rainier Range will be open, and we're gonna shoot. And then we're gonna. So as soon as like the captain like tells us, forget who the crew chief was. Actually, I shouldn't, but he was like his eyes lit up. He's like, and before we even got the plane, he's like, hey, so you're saying we're test firing on our way back with packs in the back? And he's like, yeah. This had been done before, Again, these are not new things. And I remember being like, what's the deal? I was like, I'm thinking because I'm not a guy. I'm like, all right, are we doing something weird? Do I need to like, He's like, no, this is gonna be great. And so sure shit. We go there. We're on our way back. It's not GS is night, right? So during the day, actually my squadron was doing well, not during 2008, but like day was Kazbek, night was GS and everything. So we're flying back. It's night. The packs can't see anything. We're all goggled up, and it's like I said, how does it always start? All right, Kish, here's what you're gonna do.
I'm gonna scream.
I'm gonna scream really loud. It's true, right? He's like, when I get to when it becomes my gun, before I fire, I'm gonna scream he's like, Cash, you scream really, really loud, and just point out my crew window, right? And I'll take it from there, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for you, right? And it's gonna be great. And I'm like, and then now I feel like I know what's going on, because it wasn't anything intricate, right? It was just like, we're gonna act like when we test our guns, that it is a life and death. Oh my God! and that's kind of what we did. And I think we actually put a little bit more test fire rounds in there instead of like 15, which goes like it's like 1.2 seconds. I think we maybe put like I don't know 20 to 30 or something in there. Again, but nothing big because you only have such a small window, right? And so it's funny if anyone was up on ICS. Obviously, they'd know something's coming up, but like, it's literally any other day. It's just like, okay, you're coming up. It's literally like you're landing at, LaGuardia or something. Like that. Right? It's 78 degrees, and sunny, So these pilots are just like, again, we're on a, right south of TQ on the Tacoma Air Base, where this range is, a bunch of Hulks and stuff. And I go, right gun, you're gonna ask for chief side. He's like, I have your target in sight. And then he'll confirm, Roger, I have targets, whatever, 11 o'clock, something like that. So it's like, okay, you're clear to fire when targets are a beam. Right there, it's like, Roger, clear to fire when targets are a beam. And then all of a sudden, that's when I'm like, and the best thing about being there, I don't have to actually say words or anything. All I have to do is say something to where everyone who's like sitting on the plane, they're just like, right? And all I can see is like my silhouette, and I'm like, whatever. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden, and I'm looking again, I can see everybody under goggles. There's people who didn't even like wake up when I'm screaming because again, it's so loud, the wind, the rotors. And there was they woke up and it was right? All of a sudden you see people who are like, oh my God, right? So I can't control myself. I'm like, oh my God, this is hysterical. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this whenever. So the best thing about it is there's only like one or two Hulks that were approved to shoot on. So what they do is they go into again, I'm no pilot. A dog bone, right? So a dog bone is just like it's supposed to look like a cartoon dog bone. Yeah. Right? You come out, you do like this, and then you come into and you're facing the other way now. So now like the right gun just shot, go into a dog bone. So I don't even know the angle of bank, but it is like your everyday like like if you're on a bike.
It's not dramatic.
Exactly. But I will admit, when you can't see anything and you're in a helicopter that you've never really flown in, it's probably the first helicopter ride for a bunch of these guys. You are basically at 180 degrees. And you're like, in their head, they're like, where we go? Like, Space Mountain, right? But literally, it was just like, here we go. And so that's where I really saw people. I saw men holding hands. I saw grown American warriors like, hey,
tell my wife I love her.
Exactly. Like, I'm glad I'm with you. Right? So we turn. I'm like, oh, now it's my turn. So then literally, like, we fly back. We see this Hulk. And again, it's like, hey, left gun, you sight of your target at, like 11 o'clock. I'm like, Roger, target in sight. You're clear firing targets or beam. Roger, clear firing targets, beam, yeah. So, and I get, and then, so now the crew chief is like, he's been dramatically, like, with his gun, his empty gun, now looking, he's like, when he's already called, right gun Winchester, right? Roger that, and then and actually, we wait till we get to the air, and then we load our mission, we load your actual mission ammo. He's got they can just see, dude, there's no links in the, and he's just like, we're looking around, and then finally he just turns around, he's like, cash on, and that's when I'm like, Roger, right, left gun firing, and you just see me like, so here's where it, so we just, and then it was just, we went about our business, right, because we
Sit back down,
then we left,
cigarette.
then we left to, we load our mission ammo, and actually then you sit, and then it becomes real, but then at that point you're like, you can't screw around with packs and do that, Sometimes you take the hour light and just check out people, when you're looking at that and you're just like, that guy's really ugly. What do you think? Because they don't even know they're being illuminated, right? And that's just IR. So we fly, do the whole tasking, we come back, go to sleep, right? Throughout the day, I come in and there's a message like, Staff Sergeant, go see the ODO when you get in. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, hey, do we have any, so my intel marines were, we got any Sapphires last night? We have any? And he's like, no, nothing. No. And he's like, but they asked me about. That's funny. They asked me if we had any Sapphires, not just like Third Mall or like AO West.
Yeah, sorry. Sapphires are surface-to-air firings. It's like an event where somebody shoots at the airplane while you're flying.
True. Yeah. So
go ahead.
So yeah, the ODO is the person who's just basically an ops guy. It's kind of like the duty officer, but when you're deployed, actually for an aviation, the ODO is tracking all flights, doing everything. He's the main coordination piece of that. And I come in, I see him, I'm like, hey, sir, what's one you need to see me? He's like, yeah, we have a Sapphires last night. I was like, well, I mean, I've been asleep for the last, whatever, 10 hours, but blanket ship said we didn't have any, so I don't think we. Well, what about on your flight? And I'm like, sir, my flight? I was like, Captain, and again, even though I'm the intel guy, I'm like, Captains, they didn't have anything. So, well, okay, and I haven't talked to them yet. You're the first one to show up for night shift today, but and I was like, yeah, we didn't have it. And like, why?
Why?
And he's like, we got a call from like Al Assad or something like that, and it's just weird. Just call this lieutenant back. And I'm like, all right, so like I'll call this lieutenant who's in like the G-78, like you know what I mean, like, and I'm like, what do you need, sir? What's going on? He's like, hey, so I was on a flight last night, and I'm like, and I'm like, okay.
Oh boy.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna, deny. I don't have to deny. He's asking me, did we get shot at? Did we get shot at? No, we didn't get shot at. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, I swear to God, we got shot at or whatever. And I'm like, well, sir, being that you're in like the G, X-ray Tango 47, like again, these.
Once removed.
Yeah. Who cares? Go to the G2 and ask them if there was the third mod G2, and then they run all the Sapphire reporting there, the culminating data point. So go ask. I don't know. Go ask them. I was on that flight. Actually, he's talking to me as I'm the intel chief, not like I think I did let in. I was like, yeah, I was on that flight. I should have said that.
Whoops.
I was like, what do you get? He's like, all right, well, here's the deal. So, he was on a team of, it was him, like a first lieutenant and a couple corporals, I think. But we're part of this team that came from the States that were out there for 3 weeks to do an assessment.
And he wants a combat action.
He wants a combat action ribbon.
Nailed it.
Oh
so he's like, we just
God.
got shot at or whatever this stuff.
Oh my God.
We got shot at. So he's really frantic to at least say that we had a Sapphire, because the Navy captain that's leading this entourage, because when they get back, they went into whatever admin shop that runs their again, they're not even part of the deployed forces.
MRE coordination efforts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the Navy captain's like, Lieutenant, I'm going to destroy you if you can. I'm like, no, but we got shot at. I have to admit, I kind of was like, well, call someone else. I don't no idea what happened.
We're under fire here right now. Goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Oh God.
Well, listen. You're gonna smoke a turd in hell for everything you did. Just like the rest of us.
Like
that's the Marine Corps. It's just fascinating, man. Like we could do another show with Cashin because we're not even the third of the way through his program yet. But thanks for coming out, man. We appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun too.
I'll give the world a break and I'll come back a couple months from now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, because I enjoy this too much.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have you back, man.
That'll be good.